burning. This is what the ISRO study is talking about, and that inadequate noting that satellite imagery has managed to do is something that might just be the reason for the figures that the center has been talking about on how there has been a significant reduction. To discuss this further, let me take this across to my colleague Shrishti is joining me here at the CNN News 18 studio. Shrishti, what do you make of this report, this ISRO's report that has been now come out and is talking about how that significant reduction in stubble burning incidents that the center is talking about is not actually a data that has been captured as it should have been by the satellites?
So there has been a lot of discussion on stubble burning because the first major spike in pollution levels happened around October, November, and that is the time when the farmers are setting fire to a lot of stubble. Over the last 5 years, especially since 2020, there has been a drastic decline in the number of stubble burning cases across the 6 states, especially in Punjab and Haryana, which recorded a remarkable decline in the stubble burning cases. Now from about 88,000 cases in 2020, as you just showed, the number has come down to about 5,000 such cases this year. This year, Punjab also suffered the aftermath of the floods. Now, this study, ISRO study, basically points out that since all this data is basically collected from the VIRS sensors aboard the polar orbiting satellites of NASA. Now, these polar orbiting satellites actually cross the equator at certain times during the day. So, according to these scientists from the Space Application Center, they say that there could be a shift in the peak fire activity, and they found that the initially, like around 2020, the fires were mostly happening around noon. They peaked around 1:30, and by 3:30 they used to subside. But when they got a comprehensive data, they say that the peak fire is now happening around 5:30, and which is the time when the polar orbiting satellites are not over the equator. So that data may not be covered by Indian Agricultural Research Institute, which does the satellite monitoring of stubble burning incidents. But they do agree that yes, since 2012, in fact, the stubble burning cases are on decline, but the decline may not be as much as is probably shown in the data.
All right, do stay on with us, Shashi. We also have a very special guest who's joining us on the broadcast. Anumita Roy Chaudhary is the Executive Director, Center for Science and Environment. She is with us on the broadcast. Ms. Roy Chaudhary, thank you so much for being with us. What do you make of this latest data that has been released by ISRO? What does it exactly suggest? There can be shift in the stubble burning activity to 5:30, and that's why the polar orbiting satellites have not been able to capture that activity. But what does it in a larger sense really signify? They are still the largest contributor to air pollution that the National Capital Region is witnessing?
Absolutely. So let's look at it this way. So the new evidence now is kind of confirming what we have known anecdotally so far, because a lot was being said that the farmers have kind of adapted to this technology and they are evading and avoiding the time when the time of the satellite path. Now, maybe, and we do not know to what extent because we do not have ground level data, but also keep 2 things in mind. One, that the ISRO, the NASA data and the IARI data have always been in variance. But officially, we take IARI data to assess and to take action. Now, the question is that if because of this discrepancy and with farmers adapting to this situation, whether that is artificially reducing the number of the fire incidents. Now, if that is a doubt and if that is a concern, then what we would say, and something that we have been saying for a while, that it is not adequate only to measure the fire count, the visible fire. There is also another method that satellites use, which is to assess the spread of the burnt area. And that is a lot more reliable, and the both should be complemented, because a fire incidence and the area of the fire will vary a lot. It can be a small fire to a huge fire. But what really tells you about the extent of the fire is the burnt area. So we really need to combine that, and the burnt area, whatever little that we have seen, often look pretty large, and that also gives you the extent of the area affected by burning. So it is more important, therefore, if people are defeating the system, then we have to refine our technology and methodology of assessing the problem. But the other issue that, well, overall, it's saying that the burning incidents are coming down, but
Okay.
maybe not to the extent that they're claiming. But there's another issue that we have seen this year that, yes, reduced burning, but Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, who assess on a daily basis to what extent the fire incidents are contributing to Delhi's air quality. Now, this year, what that estimate is showing that it really hasn't been that great. On a daily basis, for most of the early winter, we have seen the contribution levels to be less than 1 to 2% to 2 to 5%, and then up to 10%, and only for very few days between November 10 to 14th, around that time, when we have seen the contribution peaking. And I think on 11th or so, when it peaked to the highest, which is 22%. And then again, the next year reduced to 12%. So overall, the contribution this time seems like it hasn't been a big problem in Delhi. Okay. So, and that has really diverted and actually, thankfully, to the more important dimension of the problem of the local pollution. So it's clearly telling us that Delhi and the NCR region cannot hide behind the smoke screen of farm fires anymore. We really have to deal with our local pollution with absolute stringency.
So in a sense, Shrishti, what the government at the centre and the Delhi government essentially is also saying, even though they ended up citing a data which is not completely foolproof and inadequate, they did go on to say that there has been a significant reduction in stubble burning. Like Ms. Roy Chaudhary is mentioning, that this is not really the largest contributing factor as far as pollution in the National Capital Region is concerned. There are local contributors, traffic for that matter. All of this needs to be taken into account. So even if we take government at the face value and the report that they have cited at face value, what is the next step? What are they really doing to allay this kind of pollution that the Delhiites are having to brave every day now?
Right. So just as Anumita highlighted, the focus largely should be on the local sources of pollution. See, the first episodic spike, the stubble burning may be contributing to it. But as we see that there has been a decline, but the major sources of pollution all through the year, there are comprehensive inventories prepared by IIT Pune as well as, by TERI as well, which show that 40% of the overall total PM 2.5 pollution load is coming from vehicles, and followed by industries, and then of course the open biomass burning and burning happening at the landfill site. So I think the government's focus should be on bringing down the pollution levels from these sources, and which will actually bring a long time reduction in the pollution levels in the national capital. Now, stubble burning happens in October and November. Now, the IITM data, if you actually observe the daily count, we had the first GRAP, the stage 1 of the Graded Response Action Plan, was imposed in Delhi on 14th October, and then the second stage was on about 19th October. So that is the time when the air quality had already touched the very poor levels, but that was the time there was not significant stubble burning incidents happening in the neighboring states. Major spike happened around November. So I think it's very important, which the scientists and the experts that I speak to continue to highlight, that when we know where this pollution is really coming from, about 500 cars are registered in Delhi on a daily basis, plus 1,500 two-wheelers, and the number of the vehicles being registered in the capital and also that comes from outside is continuously increasing. And remember, we have enough studies, even the recent CSE report highlighted that the pollution is not just total PM 2.5 and PM 10 that we continue to talk about. It's also these poisonous gases called nitrogen dioxides, which are especially emitted from the vehicles. And unfortunately, in the recent few years, the government's focus has largely been on dust control. That is why we see a lot of investment, a lot of crores being spent on the anti-smog guns and water sprinklers. But I think there has to be a long-term plan on cutting down emissions from vehicles, from industries and other local sources in the national capital, so that the pollution all year round can be brought down, not just during the winter.
Well, absolutely. Do stay on with us. I'd request Anumita also to stay on with us, and let's discuss this further. The shift in the peak activity. Whether or not it has been ably documented is one thing, but how much of that is contributing to the worsening air quality is something that is now up for discussion, because we are here talking about how the contribution of stubble burning to Delhi's PM 2.5, what has been the record so far, which is still October 24th. What have we learnt and how much of that has contributed to the worsening air quality? Let's get a sense from our ground analysis and research that has revealed many factors contributing to the recurring and worsening state of Delhi's air. So first thing that we are learning is that this is as per the SAFER report of 2018, the key contributors to particulate matter or PM 2.5, they include, number one is transport. The Delhi's traffic, 41% contributing factor as far as the worsening air quality is concerned. And then there is industry, which is again the same contributing factor, it also stands at 41%. Other factors include that are contributing to the worsening air quality and the adding to the levels of pollution are at 9%. Then there is power, which is at 5%, and the residential pollution stands at 3%. So all of this is to break down and give a sense of what exactly is contributing to this growing pollution that Delhiites are waking up to every morning. Now, top sources privy to this topic also reveal that it is the local factors that dominate the pollution load and the episodic spike that is due to the stubble burning. Shrishti was just mentioning that, and we are in fact learning the biggest factor, that is vehicle overload. We just mentioned 41% contribution that comes in from transport, and that leads to this massive vehicular emission. So at least 500 cars, 1,500 two-wheelers registered in Delhi each day. Imagine the kind of pollution levels that come in from these the vehicular pollution and the number of cars and two-wheelers that contribute to the Delhi pollution every day. Now, these vehicular emissions are dominant source of toxic gases like nitrogen dioxide, which are potential causes of the health hazards that we also talk about that come in because of this pollution. Now, if we take a look at the AQI numbers, and this is how it stood on 11th and 12th of November this year, it was 400 plus. That is in the severe category, and the AQI as of December 5th was at 327. That again is at the very poor categories. This is how it stands, and this is what the Delhiites are really having to brave every now and then. Nothing really is helping them or giving them any kind of respite in breathing air that is not toxic. Anumita, you were talking about how stubble burning is not the only contributing source. We just broke down how vehicular traffic, the vehicular pollution, also the pollution that is resulting with the emissions that happen from industries, all of this contribute to what we breathe as Delhiites today.
Exactly. And you know what is so worrying about the vehicles is that it's not that Delhi has not tried to do anything about vehicles. In fact, if you look back, you will see that one of the largest CNG programs to take vehicles out of diesel, at the same time leapfrogging to Bharat State 6 emission standards, restricting truck entry, phasing out old vehicles. A lot of this happened to improve the technology of the vehicle. And yet, even after doing all of that, vehicles have still remained the top polluter in the city. And that's exactly what you said right now. It's all happening because whatever little advancement that we have made in technology and dealing with old vehicle is getting fully swamped by the sheer volume of traffic on the road. The numbers that you've just cited, that we are adding vehicles on a daily basis, yes. Last year, when from Vahan database, we know that the vehicle stock in Delhi overall, its total stock is about more than 1.5 crore. And only last year, we have added about 7.2 lakh. Now, which other pollution source in the city is increasing at this rate? That's the only source that is increasing like this. Now, that's because we have fully and completely failed to reinvent our public transport system, to be able to develop a well-integrated public transport strategy that can improve the service level, which means that your waiting time at the bus stop reduces to 5 minutes, and that you are not stuck in a bus in a jam forever, and that you can walk safely to your metro station, to your bus station, and you can also do a lot of your errands just walking and cycling within a short radius in your neighborhood. But the infrastructure that is needed for that has not really taken shape to the extent. The irony today is that Delhi actually has the highest number of electric buses today among all the cities of India.
Yes.
But while the bus numbers are growing, but the ridership is falling. So people are not using that electric bus. So what's the point then in making that investment if you cannot see the big shift to using public transport? So that means that the transport sector investments that is happening right now is only on flyovers, overpasses, underpasses, widening of road, just to tell us that we are going to design the road for you to use more cars, not to use more buses or to use metro. Now that investment should be repurposed to fully reinvent and fully modernize an integrated public transport system that can enable all of us, and along with that, have a very ambitious target for electrification, for zero emission transition. We cannot afford to have any more internal combustion engines in the city.
Absolutely. Anumita, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expert opinion about this. Delhiites need to know what is it that is clearly lacking on part of not just the government in the national capital, but the government at the centre. Shristi, you were mentioning about the implementation of GRAP 1 and 2. GRAP 3 has been revoked because the air pollution levels came down from severe to the very poor category. But do you think it was too soon?
It's November and as per the forecast of the India Meteorological Department, the temperatures are going to fall in the coming few days and there could be a cold wave in certain regions. So when the temperatures fall, then all this pollution load also comes very closer to the surface, and that is when the air quality actually starts deteriorating. But the CAQM, which has the responsibility for the Graded Response Action Plan, it uses the data from the IITM air quality forecasting system, and that indicates that the air quality is expected to remain poor to very poor, which is between 300 to 400 AQI over the coming days. So depending on that and the daily AQI index, I think the situation is going to be monitored accordingly, and the Graded Response Action Plan will be implemented. Remember, just a few days before, the government has also strengthened the Graded Response Action Plan, and that is why over the last 2 weeks we saw these directions being sent out to the Delhi government to ensure that no outdoor physical activities are conducted because the air quality is very poor. The private offices were encouraged to go to 50% work from home so that the vehicular pollution, the traffic congestion can be reduced. So all those measures are being taken. I would just I like to highlight one more point. Is that experts also highlight that it's not just Delhi. We need to act on the entire airshed region. It's not just Delhi but the neighboring areas as well of the national capital region. So if you plan to bring down the pollution levels, let's say when it comes to vehicles, industries, stubble burning, anywhere, it has to be done on a comprehensive level with the collaboration of the Delhi government with all the neighboring state governments. Only then the action can be taken. And remember, this time the residents of the national capital, the anger has been really simmering. There were almost 4 protests at India Gate, at Jantar Mantar, where children turned up, senior citizens turned up, and they voiced their concerns that it's high time that Delhi takes some strict measures.
And Shristi was there to cover those protests for us and bring those voices, important voices, as far as the air pollution goes, and that needs to be heard.